Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week, we had the great pleasure of speaking with Michelle Shoaidi. If you didn't get a chance to check out that episode, please do. I completely appreciate the conversation we had. It was very insightful. So please check it out. If you have a complex kid like we do, you'll definitely appreciate the conversation that we had last week together. This week, I am especially excited to have Anastasia Arauz on the show today. Anastasia is a seasoned family counselor, registered play therapist, and the founder of Live Life with Clarity. With over 20 years of experience working with autistic children in public schools and private therapy, Anastasia has dedicated her career to helping families build balance and break free from generational trauma. She combines her expertise in education, counseling, and play therapy with her coaching practice to guide parents in fostering healthier family systems. Passionate about empowering families, Anastasia offers valuable insights on navigating life with neurodivergent children. Her focus includes practical advice on traveling with neurodivergent kids, creating structured home environments, and supporting siblings of special needs children. Anastasia's commitment to making difference is summed up by her favorite quote, "Families are the compass that guides us." Please welcome Anastasia to the show today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I know. Here. Well, like we said earlier before we started recording the call, like this has been a long time in the making. So we're finally made it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so happy. Well, and I knew when we spoke that I wanted to have you on the show because I think you have so many wonderful, beautiful insights. And I really am especially can't wait to talk about, how you help siblings that have neurodivergent siblings, right? But, how do you approach coaching families to develop a healthy mindset for building a balanced family system?
So every family is so unique. So it just depends on really all the family members who we're dealing with, who is part of the picture, and then really getting into seeing each person for who they are, right? And trying to get very present, seeing everyone for who they are, what is going to help everyone feel grounded, safe, just that sense of calm and peace. So helping them at the beginning kind of establish that.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because sometimes we focus so much on our kiddos. Like I know I have with Drayson, I focus so much on his neurodivergency, what he needs, that I think sometimes not identifying what the rest of the family needs, it kind of goes to the wayside.
It does. It does because you're spending so much time with that one child because they need it. They need so much physical time, physical energy, and the others, it's easier to navigate them and you forget. And they also have needs, and we all know that. But as parents, it's just hard to be everywhere at one time.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
so to give yourself grace for that, to help, I really love to help moms see that they're doing the best they can. We're all doing the best they can. And so that's the big thing.
Yeah, I always say there's no guidebook that comes with parenting. Whoever can create that book is going to make a lot of money. But well, one of the aspects that you talk about is traveling, and traveling can be really challenging for families with neurodivergent children. I know we've traveled with Drayson, and we've definitely had to do a lot of prep work before we even get to the travel part. But what are some of the strategies or tips that you recommend for making family travel smoother and more enjoyable? And I love that we're talking about this because summer's about to start.
Yeah.
And so this is perfect timing. But do you have any quick tips or strategies that you could offer to families listening today?
Yeah, of course. So this is one of my favorite things that I love to do with families is help them plan for travel or new situations.
Yes.
And really with kids that are neurodivergent or just typically developing. So if you have a neurodivergent kid, you can do the same activity like all together, just with that one child, whoever, you can all do it because everybody gets excited, especially for a trip.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I think is just really previewing everything what your plan is. And so the more everyone knows before you go, the calmer it's going to be. And so going to websites of a place you're going. So say you're going to a museum, right? So go to the actual museum website, look at the website, go to the actual like picture of what the museum is looking like, the physical picture of it. So the kids can see what is in each room, especially if you have a child that is neurodivergent. They function so much better when they are aware of all the things that are going to happen.
That they kind of see what's coming. Okay.
Yes, it really helps relieve their anxiety. It helps them feel grounded and safe. And so I think really, and then you could do that for all aspects of it. If they haven't been on a plane, talk about it, watch some YouTube videos of what it's like to go on a plane. What's it like when it takes off? Whatever every child is so different. So whatever they're struggling with or whatever you think that they're going to really has a challenge for them, really walk through that very, very carefully. I actually just did a session recently. It wasn't travel, but it was about a child getting ready to go to middle school. He is autistic. And so we went through, he was amazing. We went through the entire website of the school. He wanted to see every piece of it with me. And so we did it all. And then I think he even went home and then did it with his mom again. So I think giving them, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, well, it's not just like long distance traveling. It could be just any form of travel, really. Just going to the grocery store, getting ready for school, kind of what you're describing right now. And I think that's amazing. Yeah. So he went home again and did that with his mom looking through the site.
Yeah, he loved it. Because then he's at a school that is Montessori. So it's a very small school. He's getting ready to go to a traditional middle school, which is going to be a huge adjustment.
Huge transition,
Yeah, so we've just been working on that transition. And that was one of the activities we did, was just going through the website. And then we found they had a Facebook page. So it was really fun because then we could see the activities that are actually going on right now. He saw some of the sporting things that he found interesting that he might be interested in doing. So really just now we went on this like basic, like Google, what are those Google, you get lost in it.
Yeah. Google Images is, or you start going down the rabbit hole of things. Yeah.
The rabbit hole. Yeah. And so it's great. Those kind of things are so good for kids that really struggle with big changes like that, especially travel, because you're at a whole new place, things they've not seen, they're not used to.
Yeah. And that was the biggest thing I was worried about. Last year we took a big trip. We're in Arizona and we went over to Florida. We went to Orlando. We went to, and then we went to Disney World, and then we jumped over to St. Martin, and I was terrified about the plane ride. Like the whole time, I think I know I overpacked. I completely overcompensated because I kept thinking, okay, well, if he needs this, I'm going to pack this. If he needs that, and my husband was like, there's a weight limit on the plane. I was like, well, maybe we should just drive. It was like I was going through all of these channels of thought. And it's so funny because my husband actually is the one that had the forethought to go onto YouTube and watch plane rides with Drayson. And I was in such a frenzy, though. I was in such an emotional frenzy about all these other things and worrying and overthinking it. And he was like, well, here, we're just going to watch videos. And it worked like a charm. He no issues. I even had all this extra stuff. I'm like, would you like to do this? He's like, no. Would you like this? And like, no. And I'm like, okay, so it was me that was completely freaking out. But it was really funny because that whole prepping was perfect for him. That's all he needed. So I think you bring up a really valid point that kids really need to kind of see what's coming in order to kind of prepare themselves. And we're really lucky that we're in a day and age where we can do that. We have the resources to kind of show them, here's what it looks like. And he did beautifully on the plane. I couldn't believe it. But I was, here I was like, I think they had to give me anti-anxiety medication for the plane ride instead of him. But
that's great. And that's just a testament to how much he feels safe with y'all and how, how much work you've done with him. That's great.
Well, and I think too, it's just, like I said, I didn't even think about it. And my husband was like, well, just pull up a couple YouTube videos. And I was like, oh. That's way more simple than what I was doing. Like
Yeah.
I was trying to talk to him and I was trying, we can do this and that, but he had no concept of what it was like to be on a plane. He had been on a plane before, but he was a baby. He was like 15 months old. So I didn't expect him to remember anything. But the whole complete travel was great. And I was very, very thankful for it. But kudos to my husband for that, because I did not know what to do at all when it came down to that. But what are some common challenges that families face when setting structure in the home for neurodivergent children? I know we have faced our challenges, but are there some common challenges that you've noticed across the board working with families?
Yeah, I think a lot of times the behavior issues, if the child is having a lot of anger or the outbursts that they have, and then you have the other kids that then mimic the behaviors, like a typically developing child will mimic or copy. And so that's, I think, a hard one that I hear from parents and I see.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that 100%. And I think that it's really difficult to know how to not combat that, but how to manage it, Yeah. At least a lot of trial and error has happened in our home, for sure. And I would assume that you have to kind of convey that to families too, that, if this doesn't work, there's something else we can try. Because I think sometimes that's the frustrating part as a parent. Like, you're like, it's not working. So you it's like throwing darts. You have to see what sticks. Do you find,
I think,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Okay. Sorry.
Okay,
I do
fine.
find that. And I think too that people, like, say something's been going on for 5 years, 6 years. When they get to me, they're very frustrated. They're very just like stuck. And so I have to remind them, like, you guys have been doing this for a really long time this way, and everybody wants quick fix.
Yes.
And sometimes it can't be that quick, because the children are so used to this same system, the same pattern that's been happening for the past 5 years. It's really undoing that. And one of the cool things about kids is they're they're present, they're quick to change, but it does take time, and not always the time that we think it should happen. And so I think a lot of times it's having that patience. It's having that give and take of, like, that trial and error. You're saying what's going to work, what's not going to work. And so coming back around, like, every week we'll come back and just kind of talk about how the week went, and then going over the things that did work, and then maybe tweaking things here and there a little bit.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I always say, what's the definition of insanity? You're doing the same thing over and over. I'm like, if it's not working, then maybe we need to figure it out. I mean, you want to give it enough time to see if it will work. And I think that that's where, for me personally, where I've struggled. It's like, well, have I given this enough time to see if it'll work? And if I feel the answer is yes, okay, let's try to look for something else. But sometimes I wonder, like, am I really giving it enough time? Like, because Drayson is delayed in a lot of ways. So I have to also remember that how I would adapt might be quicker than how he would adapt. Do you find that that's common for a lot of families too?
I do. I find that's very common, because we have to remember too, developmentally, any child, neurodivergent, typically developed, whatever, their brains are so much smaller than ours. They're not as developed. And so, they are going to be slower in some areas. And we are very quick to know what's going to happen next and what should happen and how this should be. And the other thing I think that happens a lot is we compare ourselves to other families or other things we think are happening in people's homes. And so we're like, this should not be happening. We should stop this. We should fix this. And we have to get out of that comparison. So I think the comparison is a big thing, really wanting things to be fixed quickly, and also not being consistent. Like, a lot of times people say they're doing something for a long time, and they are, but it's not as consistent as it needs to be. Like, if you start something, it has to be consistent. The kids have to know this is the way it's going to happen every single time, even when you're tired, even whenever the day has been really a lot. The same thing has to happen. And I say too, a lot of times kids are very successful in school. Some children, especially neurodivergent kids, if they're in a class and they trust the teacher and they're in there, they're going to do well, because everything is very predictable. It's the same thing every single day, and it's very consistent.
Yeah, it's very, very structured. Yeah, I always say Drayson thrives off of structure. If I can give him structure, and you're right, there's some days where I'm so tired that I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to. I don't want to. But I know that if I don't want the behavior either. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm stuck. It's like, well, then I always have to try to kind of remind myself of that to push through so that I can still keep that structure for him because, sometimes, I want the break too. But it's funny that you say that because yeah, if we don't stick to that structure, it's definitely something that we notice in our household, like right away. I'm like, okay, well, now that was maybe my fault because I didn't
Yeah.
stick to this. I didn't stick to the script. You know what I mean? So, so how would you suggest then that families effectively implement some of these strategies? We're talking about the consistency. So, is it just do you have any quick tips in regards to that? Because I know for us, we moved from one thing to another. Maybe it was with lists at first before then we could verbally tell them. And then now that we verbally tell them, we don't have to do the list anymore. So do you have any like effective implement types of routines for families? Do you have any quick tips on that?
Yeah, I think that I just lost my train of thought. There's something I was going to tell you.
It's okay.
Can you start with you asked me a question at the very beginning of what you were saying. There was a
Yes.
specific part of the question. What was that? Can you just repeat that?
Oh, it was just how do you think that parents can effectively implement routines and structures in the household?
Okay. Yes. So I do think it's the consistency, and it's also using the supports around you. Like a lot of times it's one parent that ends up doing most of this. And just like in a school has like the teacher and they have several assistants. You can't do this all by yourself. And so using the supports around you, whether you have a worker that comes in the home, you hire a person like a teenager from the neighborhood that comes in and helps you, whether it's your partner is helping you. So I think a lot of times not putting it all on one person and using the supports, I think that's a really good way to keep things very consistent with kids, especially the ones that are challenging, like the ones that have the behaviors, the neurodivergent children, because it's exhausting. Like, and you don't want to get burnt out. It's every single day, 24 hours a day. So I think what I've noticed that works really well is really using this of people being consistent and then having support. If you're married, you and your partner playing off of each other.
Yeah. And
if you're not,
and that's been a huge thing, like for us. Like I didn't ask for help at first. I didn't ask for help at first. And I went into, a couple years in when we started down this journey with Drayson with his autism diagnosis, like I went into complete burnout and emotional breakdowns. I would cry and wouldn't know why I was crying. I would be 1 minute I'd be super happy. The next minute I was almost like angry. And I went through this period where I realized that I had to start asking for help. And I had to start being okay with the behaviors. I had to start being okay with, okay, well, that's just what it is. Like, and I really struggled with that. And my husband had a hard time initially at first too, because I wasn't asking for help. He couldn't understand why I was the way I was. And now I have to communicate that to him. I can't do this today, or I need help today. I just can't bring myself to do X, Y, and Z. Can you help? And I think you bring up a really valid point, because we forget that we have to really work hard at creating that support system as well as, right, just helping our kid. So I would think that that's something that you really talk to the parents about, that you work with, the families.
Yeah, I do. I think the support system is key. And then I think you brought up a good point of just even knowing that you can ask for help, that you have to ask for help, that's okay. It's okay. Because I do think as women, a lot of times we're doers, and we do, and we fix.
Yeah.
And we don't even, it's not even like you're not trying to ask, you don't even realize you need help sometimes.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like I was just siloed into like, this is what I have to do. And, and it was daunting because, then I realized I'm like, oh my God. Then I almost went through this like emotional period of like, is this my life? Like, this is it? Like, this can't be it. Like this, like I wasn't enjoying things with Drayson. I wasn't enjoying things with my family, my other son. Like I was finding that I was just kind of almost going through like the routine of things. And I really wasn't taking in, beautiful moments with my family. And I think like you bring up a wonderful point by saying that, because it's true. You just kind of get in that mode of doing, and then you just stay there. At least I did for a while. And I think that that's really difficult to overcome. It was hard for me to ask for help. It was hard. And I don't know if that was the egocentric part of me, or because I was so used to doing it, or because I thought it should be done a certain way. Like, or if it was a control thing, like, I don't know. But I had a really hard time at first asking for help.
And that's common. And I think the control piece is huge sometimes. And just knowing that we can do it the right way, right? Like we have in our heads, like, this is going to be, I'm going to do it the right way, and letting go of that control. And getting back to that, like, what is the actual goal of this? The goal is to be a happy family. The goal is to have joy, to make fun memories, to enjoy each other. And I think that a lot of times we forget that, because we just get stuck and we're just going.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you figured that out.
It took a lot of surrendering. I'll give you that. Like, I really had to surrender it. And even now, sometimes I'm like, if I want it to the outcome to be a different way, I'm like, okay, I have to remember. It's okay. Even if it doesn't look like the way I thought it was the outcome was the result was different than what I thought, but it was still a good result. Or the pathway to that result was different, but it still ended up good. Like, I think having a little bit of faith in that too has been really, really hard for me. And I definitely now, I see it and I can recognize it. But the first few years into Drayson's diagnosis, I was all over the place. And so do you work with families that are typically new into diagnosis, or also just years in, or kind of a wide range of families that you've worked with?
I mean, I've done all of it. I've worked with a lot of families from every age. And I think it's interesting because you go through stages of it. And like at the beginning, right, you have this grief you have to go through of, like, you had all these expectations of what this child was going to be, and you have to let go and create new expectations and create new dreams because a lot of times we create this own thing about our kids, and we have this own vision for our kids, and we have to let that go, especially if you have a child that is autistic or neurodivergent, because they're not going to grow up exactly how you pictured in your mind. So the beginning is a lot of grief and a lot of, like, getting to the belief of, like, this is going to be different and it's okay. And I say grief because it's like a dream is dying, right? It's this thing you just have to go through.
Yeah. And my grieving process was much shorter than my husband's. My husband's grieving process was much longer. And it's funny because one of the things that he said when Drayson first got diagnosed was that it made him sad because he knew his son might not ever play football or run track or do all those things, because that's what he did. That's what Pat did. And it's funny because recently, a couple months ago, we just moved, and the boys were in the backyard, and Drayson was jumping on the trampoline, and he found a ball. He started throwing the ball to Pat. And I realized in that second they were playing catch. And I said to Pat, "Do you realize that you just got your wish?" And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "One of the things that you were really upset about was that you thought you would never get to play catch with your son." And his face just dropped, and I was like, "You're playing catch with your kid right now." And he's like, "Oh my gosh." And like, it was just so great to see the smile on his face, but it just didn't look like it. And he even said later, he goes, "You know what? Thank you for bringing that to my attention." He goes, "Because it was still what I wanted. It just didn't look the way I thought it was in my mind, how I thought it was going to look." So he kind of, we had surrendered that idea so long ago. We had gone through the grieving process, and then it was still there presenting itself just in a different way, shape, or form. And so I think that you bring up such a valid point about the grief component, because I talk to parents about that all the time, that the grief is there, and you just, it's like a dream dying, but that doesn't mean that there's not a different dream that's happening in the process of all of this, right? And I think bringing those moments to light for those parents, I'm sure you get to spend so many wonderful moments with those parents. And now we were lucky, our kids are very far apart in age, but you do help actually siblings as well that have siblings that are maybe autism or other neurodivergent, right, complications. Tell me a little bit about what you do to help the siblings that are with their families.
So I will really help them be seen, right? So a lot of times, because they haven't, like, I'm working with a little girl right now, and her brother is autistic. He's younger. And so her confidence is just, and it's not anything anybody did on purpose, right? Like, her confidence just is low. And I think she spent a lot of time taking care of herself because mom has been so busy with the other ones. So one of the things that I do with her is because I'm a licensed therapist as well as a coach. And so my background in therapy comes really into play in this, and that I'm really working with her just on confidence building and really helping her just see the beauty in herself. In that, so a lot of times with parents, I would suggest maybe look for a therapist, look for someone your child can talk to, especially if if you notice things about them that you wish could be different, or you see things in their personality that you're like, that's just not really them. So I think that's something that parents can do, is if they're seeing things that they know they can't really help, is reaching out to a therapist or a coach or someone for your child, so they have a person to talk to that is objective and not part of the family, and they can then get out. Because a lot of times kids, whenever someone's not part of the family, they'll express a lot more and say a lot more because they feel freer. And so if you've dealt with a long diagnosis of a child having autism, and just has taken so much time, and you've spent a lot of time in dealing with that, that child probably does have a lot of feelings about it, might not know how to verbalize them, might not know how to talk about it, might not want to talk about it with you because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to create a division. And so that is one thing I do talk to parents about, is helping them see that it's okay to get them a therapist. It's okay to get them a coach to talk to somebody else about some of the things going on in the home.
Right. And that makes sense completely, because I think we don't mean to ignore that dynamic. Like I said, I was really lucky because my two boys are farther apart in age, so they almost got to have their own kind of childhoods, But even my oldest son, who's 29 now, sees those things with his little brother and asks questions and wants to know and is curious. But I've talked to lots of families, and even at Drayson School, a lot of the moms that I talk to and see every week, they have other kids, and they're managing their schedules and doing things for their kids, and they're now that their kids are getting a little bit older, they're seeing not necessarily problems, but they're seeing where maybe those gaps weren't filled, or maybe, we've been paying attention to this other child, and I realize that I'm not giving him or her the attention that they need, or maybe the resources that they need too, right? Because I do think that we talk about within the autism community, it takes a village, but it really does for every child, right? I mean, it really does for every child. You need that support system, for neurodivergent or not. I think that every family needs that support system for their kids. So is it also just helping with their confidence, or what are some of the common things that you see with siblings that have neurodivergent siblings?
I see anger. I see a lot of anger. I see a lot of them just not being able to know how to talk about it, like their feelings about it. Because a lot of times it's just part of their family. It's what their family is, and that's okay. But they don't have the words to express just their feelings, their thoughts about it, because they think it's all normal. And it is normal because that's their family, but there's so many things that go along with it. I have a son that's 11, but when he was 3, my husband's son moved in with us, and he was having a lot of problems behaviorally. And I ended up spending a ton of time just trying to help him and getting resources for him. And so because of my background, when my child was 3, I spent very little time with him, not very little time, but just less time than I would have liked. Right. So I used so many resources, like in our neighborhood. I would send him to friends where he could play, or I'd have my mom, or I would do different things just so he was not feeling neglected. Like, he was not feeling like I wasn't there, because he was being with other people, the village, like you say. I
Right.
think it's really important that the kid, and even now, like he's 11, and those few years whenever we had my husband's son here, it was hard. And so I have him in therapy now because some of the things are still coming out in him of just
Yeah.
anger, different things that we experienced during that time. And he doesn't want to talk to me about it. So I make sure to try to get the
Right.
resources.
And plus
And
they're not emotionally mature at a level yet where they, like you said, they can't identify why they're angry. They just know they're angry. They can't identify why they might feel a lack of confidence, but they know that they don't have confidence. Like and I think, and that's heartbreaking, I think, sometimes to watching kids. Like I've seen that even with Drayson and even with my oldest son. It's like, it's hard to watch because and as a parent, you want to be able to help them. So I love that you're saying to go to outside resources, because I think sometimes if we feel helpless as a parent, we go into a state of overwhelm and then we break down and we do nothing. Like that's what, like literally like that, it's like, okay, well, I don't know what to do about this. So I'm just going to submit, and I know I have, and sometimes I have those moments and then I'm like, okay, I got to dust myself off and get back in the game. But like the overwhelm is a very real thing. And so I would assume that you probably see that with some of the kids that you're helping that might have a brother or sister with autism. Do you feel that they enter some sort of state of overwhelm too, because they can't articulate necessarily how they feel?
Not as much as I do with the parents tend to be more overwhelmed than the kids do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the kids are so used to it, right? Because that's their life. That's what's happening every day.
They've regulated that way. They've been brought into it that way. Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I don't see them as overwhelmed. I mean, I see anxiety at times with things, because a lot of times, like with a child that's autistic, everybody's like, okay, what's going to happen next? Like you're on that state of alert. And so I do see the anxiety at times, the anger, the confidence, like I was saying. But the cool thing about all of that is that it can be helped, and it can, and if you do it when you're young and you get the resources they need, or even you could do it in your home, talking about all these things, kids are so resilient. That's the cool thing about kids. They're resilient. And if they have the words to talk about it and know the questions to ask, like sometimes they might not even know a question to ask or know what, like, so I think just giving them the tools to be able to speak about it and talk and understand why they might be feeling a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we end the show for today, I do want our listeners to know how they can connect and learn more about you. And for those of you listening, I'm going to post all of your information also in the show notes as well, so that they have a way to get a hold of you. But where can our listeners connect with you?
Sure. On my website. So my website's just my name, AnastasiaArauz.com. Also on Instagram, I'm Anastasia.Arauz. And you can just send me an email, or if you want to get on my email list, just you can get on that through either place, and we can connect that way, and I will get back to you.
And do you offer like monthly, weekly sessions? Like what do you suggest that parents start off with if they're looking to, contact you about some of the services that you offer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I have my program is I have a 6-session program that I do with parents initially. And so it's 6 sessions. And it depends. It's so unique in that it depends what the family looks like. It might be 6 sessions just with the one parent. It might be 6 sessions with both. Maybe it's going to be with kids, right? Maybe it could be with one of your children. It can be whatever it needs to be. And so it's 6 sessions. It goes about 3 months. Okay. And we just figure out what your family's needing and really trying to set some goals and solve some of those issues and struggles that you're having. And in that 3 months, you'd be surprised at what can be changed. There's a group coaching component that goes with it, as well as a pre-recorded module. So it's pretty comprehensive. I really try to work on that entire system, like we talked about at the very beginning. Yes. The best as possible.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, I want to thank you for all your hard work and dedication that you've provided to families over the years. And I think what you're doing is fabulous. For those of you listening today, I highly encourage you to please reach out to Anastasia, especially if you're trying to really look at strengthening your family dynamics, maybe helping your other kiddos in the household that don't have autism or a neurodivergent diagnosis necessarily, but I think that you offer so many other expanded resources to families, and I truly appreciate all of your knowledge and insight.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to have been here. It's been great.
I know, absolutely. Like I said, it's been a long time coming, but we finally did it. So I'm so happy that we were able to have this conversation today. Thanks again for being on the show today. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
This concludes our episode for today. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you'd like to hear about, please send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you haven't done so already, or feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word to others that this would help, and feel free to give us a good rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, keep working on your puzzle, and remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.